It's terrible that after 50 years, it is behind closed doors. And I've no intention.
Prince William did not raise his voice. He did not threaten anyone, summon the press, or demand a public confession. Instead, he placed a sealed folder on the table and delivered one devastating order. Every private privilege, ceremonial connection, charitable role, and palace arrangement involving Camilla's relatives was to be terminated. The decision stunned King Charles. But what shattered the room was the reason behind it. A private revelation from Andrew Parker Bowles that William could no longer ignore. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William had summoned Charles and Camilla to a private room at Windsor with no advisors or courtiers present. Windsor, one of the monarchy's principal residences, carried the weight of continuity and sovereign authority. That made the meeting more than a domestic argument. The prince kept the folder beside his right hand and declared that every unofficial tie connecting Camilla's family to royal power would end immediately. Charles reached for the first page. The king read in silence, removed his glasses, and placed them beside the file. He had expected tension, not a documented account claiming that Camilla had pursued arrangements designed to preserve palace access, ceremonial invitations, charitable influence, estate privileges, and future assurances for the Parker Bowles family beyond his reign. Camilla gripped the arm of her chair. The queen consort insisted that Andrew had distorted old conversations and turned private fears into something calculated. She looked toward William for hesitation, but the future king gave her none. He explained that the succession, the legal transfer of the crown from one monarch to the next, could not carry hidden promises into his reign. William opened the folder wider. Dates appeared beside private meetings. Altered guest lists matched handwritten instructions. Foundation discussions carried notes about future involvement. Andrew's documented account was not standing alone. The prince had checked the former husband's private statement against records never intended for him to see. Charles turned another page and froze. The monarch recognized a name linked to one proposed arrangement, someone close enough to make the discovery personal. Camilla saw his expression change and stopped defending herself. William finally stated his reason. The monarchy could not become an inheritance network for families outside the direct constitutional line. He was not punishing Camilla. He was blocking a second structure of influence from growing around the crown. The order had been issued, but before Charles could decide whether his son had gone too far, he had to understand the three people whose private history had exploded into a royal crisis and threatened to divide the entire monarchy. This was never simply a struggle over invitations, charities, or palace doors. At the center stood three people, bound by decades of loyalty, regret, and unresolved history. William saw a threat to the future of the crown. Camilla saw her family being punished for her position. Andrew Parker Bowles saw a secret arrangement becoming more dangerous with every passing year. And Charles, trapped between them, faced a choice no husband or monarch could make without losing someone. William had spent years preparing for a reign built on restraint. The crown, meaning the public institution, carried by the sovereign, rather than one private family, could not survive if affection became entitlement. The prince believed relatives by marriage could be loved and protected, but never allowed to expect permanent access to royal property, influence, or ceremonial standing. Camilla understood the fear behind that boundary, yet she felt its cruelty. The queen consort had fought for acceptance year by year. She feared that once Charles was gone, her family would be treated as embarrassing remains of another reign. To her, protection meant preventing humiliation before it arrived. William remembered moments when Camilla had supported him, softened tensions, and stood beside Charles during family storms. The future king now questioned whether those gestures had existed beside a hidden effort to secure her relatives inside his reign. His disappointment ran colder than anger, because it touched trust formed over decades. Andrew Parker Bowles carried a different wound. He had remained silent because he did not want to shame Camilla or expose conversations shaped by fear. Yet Andrew now believed that silence would force William to inherit promises he had never seen and obligations he had never approved. Camilla sat alone after the Windsor meeting and called Andrew. He watched the telephone ring from across his study, but he did not answer. She waited through the final tone, lowered the device slowly, and understood that their long history would not rescue her. Charles knew more than he had admitted. The king remembered fragments of conversations about future invitations, family access, and protection after his death. He had heard them as a husband hearing fear, not as a monarch hearing policy. Now that distinction was collapsing completely. William called it protection of the institution. Camilla called it protection of family. Both believed they were defending something sacred. Then Andrew sent a private message. A crucial conversation had taken place before a major royal ceremony, and that moment had turned private anxiety into a deliberate plan. To understand why William acted with such finality, the story had to return to the evening, when one conversation crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The true beginning of the rupture did not occur in a council chamber. It began at a quiet private dinner where no cameras were present and no official minutes were taken. Glasses were cleared, aides had withdrawn, and the conversation should have ended with ordinary family reassurances. Instead, Camilla asked a question about what would happen to her relatives after Charles's reign. Andrew Parker Bowles heard the answer, and then heard her push for something far more permanent. Camilla had invited Andrew to speak privately after a royal reception several months before William issued his order. She began carefully, asking whether her children would still be welcomed once Charles was gone. The queen consort then moved beyond reassurance. She mentioned continued palace access, selected ceremonial invitations, and roles inside royal foundations, the charities formally connected to members of the monarchy. Andrew first assumed she was speaking as a frightened mother. Then Camilla referred to written understandings, trusted intermediaries, and arrangements designed to survive a change of reign. He set down his glass and told her that affection could not be transformed into hereditary entitlement, meaning privileges passed forward as though they belonged to a bloodline. Camilla stiffened. She reminded Andrew that her family had endured years of hostility, ridicule, and suspicion because of her relationship with Charles. The Queen argued that they deserved protection from being discarded once the king could no longer defend them. Andrew replied that he knew her too well to mistake fear for harmless concern. Fear, he warned, had started directing her judgment. Camilla reached into her handbag and placed a folded note on the table. Several names appeared beside proposed roles, access permissions, and future invitations. Andrew read the list once, folded it carefully, and pushed it back. He refused to carry it away, but he remembered every line that mattered. Andrew later found matching phrases inside a palace briefing document, a written paper used to prepare senior royals and staff for decisions. That discovery changed everything. The dinner had not been a private fantasy. Someone had begun translating Camilla's wishes into administrative language. Charles had heard parts of her anxiety, but the king had never seen the full network. He understood the fear of abandonment, not the machinery being built around it. Andrew realized that silence would leave William bound to promises the prince had never approved. Andrew finally requested a private meeting with William and brought dates, names, and a documented account of the dinner. Once he spoke, his bond with Camilla would never recover. Yet his confession gave the future king the evidence he needed, and guaranteed the confrontation now rushing toward them inside the heart of the monarchy. The confrontation began with silence. William stood beside the fireplace while Camilla entered without Charles, closed the door, and refused the chair offered to her. For several seconds neither spoke. Then she demanded that he reverse the order cutting off her family. The prince answered that the decision was already being implemented. What followed was not a courteous disagreement between senior royals. It was a deeply personal reckoning between two people who believed the other had crossed an unforgivable boundary. Camilla had requested the meeting without Charles or palace officials present. She expected negotiation, perhaps even hesitation. Instead, William had already signed instructions suspending the private arrangements connected to her relatives. Those instructions were formal directions sent to royal staff, meaning the changes were no longer threats spoken in anger. They were active decisions moving through the household. William drew the boundary carefully. Camilla's family could still see her and Charles in private. The queen consort could love them, protect them, and include them in ordinary family life. What ended was the belief that affection carried official influence, guaranteed palace access, or permanent ceremonial standing. Camilla heard rejection beneath every word. She accused William of hiding personal resentment behind constitutional language. The Queen said he had never separated memories of his mother from his judgment of her, and that he was using the future crown to settle an old emotional wound. William did not answer immediately. The prince controlled his breathing before saying this was not about replacing his mother or punishing a stepmother. No private promise, he said, could bind a future monarch who had never approved it. Camilla pulled the chair back sharply but remained standing. "You had no right to erase my family," she said. William met her anger without moving. "You had no right to write them into my reign." Camilla then attacked Andrew's motive. She claimed he had shared their private conversations through a documented account because he wanted to wound her. William replied that Andrew's statement had only opened the door. Palace paperwork had confirmed what followed. William placed a ceremonial guest list before her. A ceremonial guest list was the official record deciding who could attend a major royal event. One of Camilla's relatives had been added after staff first rejected the name, and a handwritten instruction traced the request to an unofficial channel connected to her household. The door opened before Camilla could answer. Charles stepped inside, having heard enough to know this was no misunderstanding. The king looked from his wife to his son, and realized love could no longer remain separate from duty. His next words would decide which one he was prepared to defend. For most of his life, Charles had been preparing to defend the monarchy, yet no training had prepared him to defend it from a conflict inside his own marriage. William held the authority of the future. Camilla held the loyalty of the present. Between them stood a king who understood both arguments and feared both consequences. If he overruled his son, he could weaken the next reign. If he supported William, he would confirm his wife's deepest fear, that her family's place depended entirely on him. Charles knew he still possessed the power to pause parts of William's order. The king could delay instructions issued during his reign, but many disputed privileges concerned the future royal household, meaning the staff, duties, and access controlled by the next sovereign. Those promises reached beyond his authority, because the prince would eventually inherit responsibility for them. William had prepared for that challenge. The future king secured support from senior administrative figures by presenting the decision as institutional reform, not revenge. He demanded one standard for every non-royal relative connected through marriage. Camilla's family, he argued, could not receive exceptions that another family would be denied. Charles faced his son privately and spoke with controlled anger. The monarch reminded William that Camilla had endured public hostility, personal humiliation, and years of suspicion while standing beside him. She deserved dignity. The prince agreed, but warned that dignity could not include secret promises, extending her family's influence into another sovereign's reign. Charles found Camilla later at a desk with unopened letters arranged before her. The queen consort asked whether he would stop the order. He admitted that restoring every arrangement would create a constitutional battle with his heir, a conflict over who possessed legitimate authority to shape the next reign. Charles lifted a document that could temporarily block William's instructions. The king raised his pen, held it above the signature line, and hesitated. Camilla watched his hand. When he placed the pen down untouched, she understood the decision before he spoke. William's review had uncovered something worse. Several informal intermediaries had carried requests without recording Camilla's direct involvement. The prince believed the system was designed to appear casual, until repeated favors became accepted custom. Charles could no longer dismiss the pattern as anxious conversation. Charles finally accepted the central principle. No privilege could automatically survive into William's reign. The monarch disliked his son's severity, but he refused to overturn the boundary. Within hours, revised access lists moved through the household. Invitations disappeared. Charitable offices received new instructions. Charles's silence protected the crown's future, but it also allowed William's decision to strike people who had believed their place was secure for generations ahead. Royal punishment rarely arrives with shouting. It arrives through changed schedules, unanswered calls, missing invitations, and doors that no longer open. By the following morning, William's order had moved beyond argument and into action. Camilla's relatives began discovering that familiar courtesies had vanished. What had once seemed permanent was revealed to be conditional. And for Camilla, each withdrawn privilege felt less like administrative reform and more like the public dismantling of the life she had fought to build. Camilla opened a sealed envelope and found the revised list for an upcoming royal gathering. Several familiar names were gone. The queen consort read the page twice, then pressed it flat against the table, as though force alone might restore what had disappeared. William's instructions reached every relevant office before anyone could intervene. Private access permissions connected to royal residences were reviewed, ceremonial invitations were cancelled, advisory discussions were stopped, and possible charitable roles were removed from planning papers. A royal residence meant a home used officially by the monarch or senior family members, making access both personal and institutional. William drew one line clearly. Camilla could still see her children and relatives in private, and Charles could welcome them as family. The prince was ending official privilege, not human contact. That distinction mattered because it prevented the decision from becoming exile, even as the loss still felt brutal. Andrew Parker Bowles learned through a private message that Camilla blamed him for the humiliation. He felt the full weight of their shared history, but Andrew did not withdraw his documented account. He believed speaking to William had stopped a private network from reaching the next reign. Camilla received another envelope before noon. Inside lay a returned invitation bearing a formal cancellation notice. The Queen removed the card, traced the embossed royal crest with one finger, and placed it inside a drawer without speaking. The gesture carried more pain than any outburst. Staff members began noticing the missing names. Questions moved from one office to another, and William understood that secrecy could not survive once revised lists reached outside departments. The future king knew a leak was no longer merely possible. It was approaching. Charles confronted Camilla that evening. The king asked whether she had sought guarantees for her family. She finally admitted that she had, but insisted fear, not ambition, had driven her. Her confession confirmed the heart of Andrew's revelation. William heard of the admission and requested one final meeting with Camilla. This time, the prince brought no officials, no documents, and no prepared orders. With separation already moving through the palace, only that private conversation could decide whether the family itself would be destroyed alongside the privileges. There were no folders on the table this time. No advisors waited outside with legal language, and no ceremonial titles were used. William and Camilla met as two members of a damaged family, carrying memories neither could erase. The prince had already won the institutional battle, yet victory gave him no peace. Camilla had lost the protections she tried to create, yet beneath her anger remained a fear she had never expressed plainly. When Charles was gone, she believed she would lose not only status, but belonging. William chose a small private sitting room instead of an official office. The future king wanted no written brief, no prepared statement, and no royal aide carrying words between them. A royal household meant the staff and working structure surrounding a monarch, and he needed Camilla to understand that separating her relatives from his future household did not mean removing them from her private life. Camilla arrived alone and agreed that nothing said would pass through officials. The queen consort listened as William repeated the boundary. Her children and relatives could remain part of her family. They could speak with Charles, visit privately, and be treated with basic respect. What they could not possess was guaranteed influence over his reign. Camilla finally said what fear had kept hidden. She had always believed William would distance himself from everyone connected to her once he became king. The queen feared that Charles's death would strip away not only protection, but every sign that she had ever belonged inside the royal family. William heard pain beneath the confession. The prince told her that he understood the terror of losing family better than she realized. He knew how quickly belonging could disappear. Yet grief, loyalty, and insecurity could not be turned into permanent royal entitlement without placing the monarchy in danger. Camilla reached across the table as though she might take William's hand. She stopped before touching him and slowly drew her fingers back. The future king noticed, but did not move away. For the first time since the crisis began, silence softened rather than wounded. William offered one concession. Camilla's relatives would not be publicly humiliated, and genuine private bonds would be respected. The prince would protect their dignity, but he would not reverse the institutional separation. Camilla accepted that the arrangements had gone too far. She did not forgive Andrew, yet she admitted that his documented account had exposed a plan William had every right to reject. Charles sent word before the meeting ended. The changed access lists had reached the press. William and Camilla had found a painful private understanding, but outside the palace gates, their decision was already becoming a national judgment. By sunrise, the secret was no longer confined to Windsor. Broadcasters interrupted scheduled programming, newspapers rushed out revised editions, and crowds gathered beneath the palace railings. The nation was not merely debating Camilla's family. It was debating what the monarchy should become under William. Some saw a future king protecting the crown from private influence. Others saw a ruthless act against an aging queen's relatives. One front page turned the private rupture into an image no palace statement could contain. William stood in his office, while a broadcaster called the decision the clearest preview yet of his future reign. The prince lowered the volume but left the screen on. He understood that public opinion could strengthen the reform or reduce it to a family vendetta. Charles approved a carefully worded palace statement confirming that arrangements involving extended relatives were being standardized. A palace statement is an official public message issued on behalf of the royal household. The king avoided Andrew's documented account, but he did not deny that access, invitations, and future roles had changed. Camilla read columns describing her as an outsider who had tried to create a second royal dynasty. The queen consort held the newspaper tightly as Charles urged her to stop. She folded it instead and kept it beside her, refusing to look away from the judgment now surrounding her name. The morning edition of a major London newspaper carried a full-width image of William entering Windsor beneath the headline, "The line is drawn." Smaller words declared that the future king had ended every unofficial privilege linked to Camilla's relatives. The phrase spread across broadcasts within minutes. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered around television crews. One group applauded William's decision. Another held handwritten signs calling for compassion toward Camilla. The disagreement exposed the monarchy's central problem: how to reform without appearing cruel. Andrew Parker Bowles faced reporters outside his home and refused to discuss private details. He offered only one sentence from his documented position: the future of the crown must never depend on hidden promises. Andrew's words confirmed that his intervention had been deliberate and serious. William watched constitutional commentators explain that the order did not ban private family contact. Their distinction weakened accusations of revenge and moved public opinion toward the prince. Camilla heard the same argument and understood that the national mood was slipping beyond her reach. Charles acted before the debate could harden further. The king summoned William and Camilla for one final meeting. The country had chosen its interpretation, but only those three could decide what the rupture would mean inside the family, and whether anything resembling trust could survive after every private wound became public. The final meeting was not about reversing orders or recovering lost privileges. Those decisions had already been made. Charles called William and Camilla together because the monarchy could not move forward while the family remained trapped in accusation. The king understood that his wife had acted from fear. He also understood that his son had acted from duty. One had tried to secure belonging, the other had defended a boundary. The crisis would end only when all three accepted that love and royal power could not be inherited in the same way. The king confirmed that William's institutional separation would remain in force. Institutional separation meant removing official access and influence while preserving private family contact. Camilla's relatives would receive respect, but no guaranteed palace entry, ceremonial standing, charitable authority, or royal privilege. William made the rule universal. The prince insisted that the same rule would apply to every extended family connected through marriage. The reform could not appear to be revenge against Camilla, or punishment aimed only at the Parker Bowles name. Charles turned toward his wife. The monarch told Camilla that protecting her family was understandable, but hidden assurances had endangered William's trust. The queen consort admitted that fear had carried her beyond an acceptable line. Charles then faced his son. The king warned William that duty without mercy could create another kind of damage. The future king accepted the warning and promised that Camilla's relatives would never be publicly shamed. Private bonds would remain, but official power would end. William placed the folder on the table. Camilla looked at it but did not reach forward. Charles closed the cover, fastened the clasp, and declared that no future privilege would be negotiated outside official channels. Camilla could not forgive Andrew Parker Bowles, yet she accepted what his documented account had prevented. Andrew had broken an old bond, but his choice stopped a private arrangement from becoming a constitutional conflict over royal authority. William did not withdraw his order, and Camilla did not ask again. They agreed to preserve respect without confusing affection with entitlement. Her family was not erased, exiled, or dishonored. Its connection to royal power was finished. Charles left knowing he could not protect everyone from pain. Camilla left knowing belonging could not be secured through paperwork. William remained behind, carrying the loneliness of a future king who had chosen the crown's integrity over family peace. The crisis ended with clarity. Camilla could remain within the royal family, but her family would never become part of the crown. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.